Tonight, the aerospace giant that defined American aviation for generations stands at a crossroads. Boeing's chief executive has stepped down amid mounting pressure. China has ordered its carriers to suspend all new aircraft deliveries and component orders from the American manufacturer. What you're witnessing isn't just another corporate scandal. It's the beginning of something far more consequential, a clash between economic survival and political loyalty that will reshape how global business operates for decades to come. Act 1. The beginning. A crisis was taking shape in the heart of American manufacturing, but most people didn't see it coming. When Boeing quietly announced plans to relocate portions of its production operations to Mexico, executives viewed it as routine cost management, just another entry in the ledger of a company fighting to stay solvent. But in the corridors of Washington, that decision landed like a provocation. Boeing had been more than just a corporation. For over a century, it represented American ingenuity, the embodiment of technological triumph. Its aircraft had connected continents, powered economies, and carried the flag into every corner of the globe. Now, it was moving jobs across the southern border. The response from the White House was immediate and unforgiving. Within a matter of days, the administration unveiled a threat that sent tremors through Wall Street and boardrooms nationwide: a 200% tariff on any aircraft manufactured beyond American soil. Suddenly, this wasn't about quarterly earnings or supply chain optimization. It had become a test of patriotism, broadcast live on cable news. Boeing's very right to exist was being interrogated under the harsh lights of political theater. Yet the most consequential moments were unfolding away from the cameras, in private conversations where real power moves silently. One phone call between two men, one wielding political authority, the other commanding corporate influence, would set in motion a crisis that crossed oceans and challenged the very foundation of modern global commerce. Act 2. The conversation that changed everything. The call itself lasted barely a quarter of an hour, but what transpired in those few minutes would reverberate through financial markets on 3 continents. It was late in the evening when President Trump reached Kelly Ortberg, Boeing's CEO. What started as a discussion about American manufacturing quickly escalated into something far more charged: a confrontation over sovereignty, strategy, and survival. The president's position was unambiguous. Boeing needed to keep every single production line within United States territory. American companies, he insisted, should manufacture American aircraft. Period. Ortberg, measured but resolute, offered a different perspective. He laid out the brutal financial reality. Boeing had hemorrhaged more than $23 billion since 2019. The losses were catastrophic. Moving certain operations to Mexico wasn't about abandoning America. It was about preventing total collapse in an increasingly competitive global market. Both men understood the stakes with perfect clarity. For Trump, this represented something fundamental: national strength, economic independence, and the fulfillment of a central campaign pledge. For Ortberg, it was about keeping Boeing operational in an environment where European rival Airbus and China's emerging COMAC were rapidly expanding, securing contracts that had once been Boeing's by default. When the conversation ended, no resolution had been reached. Just an uncomfortable silence, heavy with implications. Within hours, details began surfacing throughout Washington's political ecosystem. Advisors spoke to journalists. Markets started reacting. Investors prepared for volatility. Inside Boeing's Seattle headquarters, Ortberg's leadership team began preparing crisis protocols, understanding that the story would soon become public. What had begun as a confidential exchange between two powerful individuals was about to explode into a national controversy, one that would force an impossible choice between corporate viability and political pressure, dragging America's entire aerospace sector into chaos. Act 3. The Economic Shockwave. The White House's counterattack arrived with devastating speed. Less than 24 hours after Boeing's Mexican production plans became public knowledge, President Trump unveiled the 200% tariff on any aircraft assembled outside American borders. No American jet, he proclaimed, will return home assembled with foreign labor. Financial markets convulsed. Boeing's stock collapsed nearly 14% in a single session, the steepest decline since the pandemic-induced crash of early 2020. Suppliers immediately froze existing contracts. Industry analysts calculated that the tariff would impose an additional $12 million in costs per aircraft, potentially wiping out years of painstaking recovery work. In manufacturing facilities from Seattle to Wichita, workers absorbed the news with a mixture of shock and confusion. Some feared immediate layoffs. Others viewed the tariff as justified protectionism. Political figures quickly chose sides. Supporters praised the president for defending American manufacturing jobs. Critics warned he was jeopardizing one of the nation's few remaining dominant export industries. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Airbus shares surged as investors bet that Boeing's turmoil would push airlines toward European alternatives. For Boeing's executive team, the tariff represented far more than policy disagreement. It was an existential crisis. The company's operations depended on an intricate global network spanning from Japan to Mexico to dozens of other nations. More than 1,200 international suppliers provided essential components. Reconstructing that entire infrastructure domestically would require years and tens of billions in capital investment. As political firestorms intensified, Boeing issued carefully worded statements affirming its unwavering commitment to American workers. But market confidence was already eroding. The 200% tariff had transformed one business decision into a flashpoint of economic nationalism, and the reverberations were just beginning to spread far beyond Washington's power centers. Beijing's retaliation arrived with calculated precision and devastating force. Within days of Washington's tariff declaration, China announced a 125% duty on all American-manufactured aircraft. The countermeasure struck Boeing at its most vulnerable point. China represented the company's second-largest market, accounting for roughly one-fifth of all deliveries. Instantly, orders valued at more than $20 billion were suspended indefinitely. Dozens of newly manufactured aircraft now sat motionless in storage facilities, stretching from Seattle to Shanghai, wings covered, engines dormant, representing hundreds of millions in frozen capital. The damage extended far beyond Boeing's financial statements. Hundreds of component suppliers, from engine manufacturers in Ohio to aluminum producers in Kansas, watched as contracts were canceled or indefinitely postponed. According to the Aerospace Industries Association, more than 45,000 American jobs suddenly hung in the balance. In Everett, Washington, a city whose entire economy had been built around Boeing's massive assembly complex, local officials warned of potentially catastrophic tax revenue losses if production continued slowing. For Wichita, historically known as the air capital of the world, the news was particularly devastating. Smaller contractors manufacturing cabin components and fuselage sections began implementing layoffs within weeks. Financial analysts scrambled to revise projections. Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan slashed Boeing's quarterly revenue forecasts. The company's global deliveries plummeted 17% year over year, while Airbus experienced a surge of new contracts from Asian carriers seeking more stable partnerships. Even China's COMAC began quietly filling the vacuum, securing new agreements across Southeast Asia and the Middle East. As aircraft remained grounded and shipments stalled, the trade war had moved beyond abstract policy debates. It was now visible in empty hangars and silent production floors. Communities that had depended on Boeing for multiple generations now faced profound uncertainty. Yet throughout this turmoil, Boeing's leadership refused to capitulate. A daring new approach was already taking shape, one that would extend the battle far beyond American territory. Act 5. The strategic pivot. With Chinese sales frozen and American tariffs crushing profit margins, Boeing's leadership confronted a fundamental choice: surrender or evolve. Kelly Ortberg chose to fight back strategically. In early 2025, he revealed an aggressive plan to redirect hundreds of aircraft, originally designated for Chinese and American carriers, toward rapidly expanding markets throughout Southeast Asia, South Asia, and Latin America. New partnerships were forged with airlines in India, Indonesia, and Brazil, where passenger traffic was growing at over 8% annually. The strategic gamble produced results. By the conclusion of the first quarter of 2025, Boeing's deliveries had jumped from 83 to 130 aircraft. Revenues surged 18% to approximately $20 billion. Demand from Vietnam's Vietjet, India's Akasa Air, and Mexico's Volaris helped revive production lines that had been at risk of permanent shutdown. Investors detected cautious optimism. Boeing's share price temporarily rebounded 9% during April, but the recovery remained fragile. Profit margins stayed dangerously thin, and supply chain disruptions continued delaying critical components. Fuel costs had climbed nearly 30% since the beginning of the year, raising questions about the sustainability of future orders. Competitors weren't standing still either. Airbus had just announced record-breaking deliveries, and China's COMAC was scaling up C919 production to satisfy regional demand. Still, Boeing's pivot demonstrated resilience. Its aircraft were flying again, this time over different skies, serving different markets, connecting different continents. Yet even as sales figures improved, fundamental questions persisted. Could Boeing truly restore its reputation for safety and engineering excellence? Or was this rebound merely temporary relief before the next crisis emerged? Act 6. The Shadow of Doubt. For all Boeing's progress in emerging markets, one obstacle continued casting a long shadow over its recovery efforts: trust. The 737 MAX catastrophes of 2018 and 2019, which claimed 346 lives in two separate crashes, had inflicted damage that years of apologies and technical modifications could not fully repair. Even after the aircraft's conditional return to service, new incidents continued reigniting public anxiety. In early 2024, a mid-flight panel detachment on an Alaska Airlines 737 MAX forced an emergency landing, once again raising serious questions about Boeing's safety culture and quality control procedures. Subsequent investigations uncovered systemic problems, accelerated production timelines, inadequate quality assurance, and a corporate environment that prioritized speed and cost reduction over precision and safety. Regulatory agencies tightened oversight protocols. By late 2024, the FAA had positioned full-time inspectors directly inside Boeing's primary manufacturing facilities. The company's Starliner spacecraft program also faced significant challenges, experiencing fuel leaks and thruster malfunctions that delayed NASA missions. What had once stood as a proud symbol of American aerospace engineering now faced growing skepticism, both domestically and internationally. Airlines began diversifying their orders, increasingly wary of delivery delays and ongoing technical concerns. Airbus capitalized on the moment, delivering over 800 aircraft in 2024, its highest annual total ever. Meanwhile, China's COMAC expanded deliveries of its C919 aircraft to Indonesia and Malaysia. Boeing, by comparison, managed 528 deliveries, still significantly below pre-crisis levels. Inside the company, engineers and executives spoke of rebuilding credibility incrementally, one aircraft at a time. Ortberg publicly pledged that safety and quality will define Boeing's future. But confidence, once shattered, does not return easily. As competitors surged forward and investors demanded accountability, Boeing's greatest challenge was no longer political or financial. It had become ethical. a test of whether the company could reclaim its moral authority in an industry where trust is everything. Act 7. The Larger War. Boeing's confrontation with Washington quickly evolved beyond a single corporate dispute. It became emblematic of a far broader global struggle. Across multiple industries, from technology to automotive manufacturing, governments began demanding corporate loyalty while companies fought to maintain competitiveness in an interconnected global economy. Apple faced mounting pressure to relocate production away from China. Tesla expanded operations in Mexico and India despite political criticism. Even Ford and General Motors were forced to fundamentally reconsider their manufacturing strategies as new tariff regimes reshaped global supply chains. The statistics revealed just how complex this balance has become. Nearly 40% of worldwide manufacturing now depends on cross-border components and integrated supply networks. American corporations generate more than half their total revenue from international markets. Each political directive, each new tariff, disrupts that delicate web. What began as a trade disagreement over aircraft manufacturing now reflects a fundamental question facing every multinational corporation. How much operational independence can companies maintain in an era when economics and national security have become inseparable? Boeing's experience exposed this tension with brutal clarity. To survive commercially, it had to operate globally. To maintain political protection, it had to project patriotic commitment. Every major corporation now navigates this identical tightrope. Investors demand growth and profitability. Politicians demand loyalty and domestic job creation. Markets punish any hesitation or perceived weakness. The crisis that originated inside Boeing's production facilities now encompasses the entire global economy. From semiconductor manufacturers in Taiwan to automotive factories in Mexico. And beneath all the complexity, one truth remains constant. The future of international business will depend not solely on innovation or profit margins, but on how skillfully companies navigate the shifting currents of power and politics. Closing. The storm continues. Boeing's story has become a cautionary tale for every global corporation caught between political demands and economic reality. One decision, one tariff, one 15-minute phone call, and decades of stability vanished overnight. The company that once carried American pride across the skies now faces a different kind of turbulence, where political power, national loyalty, and corporate survival collide with unprecedented force. Yet through crisis and confrontation, Boeing continues, adapting, rebuilding, searching for equilibrium in a world where borders grow more restrictive even as ambitions expand larger. The storm hasn't passed. It has simply risen higher, into the very skies that Boeing helped pioneer and must now fight to reclaim. As you watch this unfold, remember, this isn't just Boeing's battle. It's a preview of the conflicts that will define global commerce for generations to come. Every company with international operations will eventually face similar choices. Every government will test these boundaries. Every market will feel the consequences. The question isn't whether more storms are coming. The question is whether anyone will be ready when they arrive.